Just when you thought your day couldn't get any worse, you wake up and discover you are trapped in your own holodeck. This is Trek PHENOMS on the Movers and Shakers Unlimited Network. Good morning, all starships in the Alpha, Beta, Gamma, and Delta quadrants. This is Trek PHENOMS, a look at Star Trek Prodigy. I am your host, Josh Pritchett, organizer of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group, and I am joined today by a very dear friend. TJ, are you there?
I am here. I'm
Hello,
here. Hi, Josh.
TJ. Hi. For those of you who do not know, TJ is a longtime member of the Northern Virginia Star Trek Meetup Group and also various other meetups. TJ, why don't you tell them a little bit about yourself?
I've been a Star Trek fan since it first premiered. I've been going to conventions since 1975. I've helped to run conventions. I've helped to manage costume competitions. I've also been a filker for over 40 years. So most of what I do these days in Star Trek fandom and sci-fi fandom is singing and performing.
Yeah. Can you explain a little bit more about what a filker is for some people who may not know?
Sure. Filk music is basically just an offshoot of science fiction fandom. It's the folk music of science fiction fandom and fantasy, science fiction and fantasy fandom and media. But basically, it's people writing songs about the subjects that they love that are, genre related. And some of it's just taking somebody else's song and rewriting funny lyrics to it, used as a verb. That's called filking a song. And also just creating brand new original material, and it's actually a total scene. People record CDs and sell them, and there's entire podcasts devoted to it, and entire conventions devoted to it. We actually just performed at a convention in Germany this year. That was the International Folk Convention, where my husband and I were the guests of honor. So it's quite the scene, but it can fly under the radar even for people that are longtime fans that may not even know it exists.
Well, that is really impressive, and I'm glad you guys just got back from Germany. And it is a worldwide thing, just like all fandom, Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who. Um, but right now, we are going to get into this week's episode of Star Trek Prodigy. So, after the events of last week's episode, our intrepid young crew decided to spend a few hours in the holodeck simulating ways that they could contact Admiral Janeway and the Prometheus. Sorry, just messed up the name of the ship she's on, and try to communicate and let them know, hey, we've got a dangerous computer bug on our ship that could wipe out the Federation. And unfortunately, all their simulations just go awry. So Dal and Gwen decide that they're just going to call it a day. Everyone's going to get some rest. But Dal starts to express to Janeway, or holographic Janeway, I should say, some doubts about whether or not they are going to ever be able to reach the Federation, or they may have to just hide out on some distant planet until they have a better solution. TJ, you want to take it from there? TJ?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Okay, great. I was muted there. Yeah, I was going to say, when this thing started, I really thought that it was going to be a, oh my gosh, another holodeck, malfunction show. But they really managed to turn it into something fun with each of the characters having their own holodeck program revealed. So that really got you into what they were going through, because it was jumping from, for each character, which holodeck program they used in their recreational time, and that the holodeck programs merged, and that you got some real insight into each of the major characters because of what you saw, how they spend their time on the holodeck.
Right. So like for Jankum, he had a kind of a alleyway fight with other
Yeah,
Tellarites where he's
yeah.
fighting bikers.
The particular Tellarite officer that had insulted him in the
Yes.
previous episode. So he had created the whole holodeck program that was nothing but this one guy, like a biker gang composed of 6 copies of this one guy, and he got to
Yeah.
completely, just clean their clocks, just one after another, which was had to be super satisfying for him.
Yeah. And then they end up in a nightclub where it turns
That
out,
was my favorite.
yep,
Yes,
yeah,
Murph
Murph.
turns out to be a fan of 1930s jazz music, and was soft shoeing and wearing the fedora and singing, bluesy jazz music on stage. And I think the best line in there is when they're like, Murph can sing, and then Zero says, or convincingly lip sync.
Yeah, and then Gwen is talking to an idealized holographic version of her
Of her
dad.
dad, who turns out to be the sympathetic bartender. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the whole thing coming to the conclusion with Dal, who is the captain of his own pirate ship, which to me is just like, that's perfect. Like, of course he would be the captain of a pirate ship.
Yeah,
And
but the key thing is that the overarching thing that they're sort of trapped in is Zero's holographic fantasy, which he
right,
likes to do these holographic mysteries where he has to solve these puzzles because that's Zero's thing.
yeah.
But
And they think that that's what they have to do. That was Zero's original hypothesis was, well, if we can solve this mystery, then we'll get out of this holodeck trap. But
yeah,
as they keep proceeding, and the programs keep merging, and they keep going from one to the next, and they keep getting worse and worse, and they realize that the safety protocols are off and they can actually get injured, that's when Zero comes to the conclusion that it's all just been a trap to keep them in the holodeck.
yeah, and we realize that the person who is actually running the trap is holographic Janeway.
Holographic Janeway. Dum da da.
Yes, because apparently portions of her program can now be taken over by the weapon. And
Correct.
unfortunately, the weapon then has, because Dahl gives her his command codes in order to try to retake over the holodeck,
Mhm.
the weapon then uses those codes to take them to Admiral Janeway's ship.
Right. So when they finally get released from the holodeck and get to the bridge, they realize that they are facing the Dauntless.
Yes.
And that is where we hang the big cliff, because we don't know how our intrepid heroes are going to get out of this next week.
Yeah, yeah, they definitely are stuck in a big one this time. So how are they going to get out this time? Well, I think we have 2 or 3 episodes left for them to try to figure this out
Yeah.
because we still have to stop the weapon, stop Gwen's father, and also rescue Captain Chakotay and
Yes.
the original crew of the Protostar. But we will get into that in predictions. So let's move on to our main segment, the good, the bad, and the Gorn. So, TJ, what did you think was best about this episode?
I just loved the character beats that they had. Each of the characters had a real shining moment that showed, what they were like on their own in the holodeck. And I think we really got some insight into, oh my gosh, Rock Talk and her cute little squishy fuzzy animals, that all she wanted was just, she has a vet program where she just takes care of little glittery rainbow creatures. That's all she ever wants to do, is cuddle animals, which was just so cute.
Yeah.
And yeah, each of them had, a real aspect of their character that became much more clear, from looking at how they like to spend their time in the holodeck, which I thought was really cool. But they also came together as a team, so
Yeah.
that worked really well too.
It's probably a good thing then that William Riker is not on that ship because I don't think that they should know. All right, enough of that. um, yeah, I thought it was interesting. You do get an insight into their personalities that we may not have always seen. I mean, some of it kind of makes sense. I mean, obviously Dow sees himself as a romantic pirate, Captain Jack Sparrow type guy, that he wants to play out these things, and Jankum, he's a guy with a lot of frustration issues, so he's going to want to take things out. He wants to, slam some things around. Very wharf like, I might say. And they all have, but I think the big surprise obviously was Murph and the nightclub. That Murph clearly likes this sort of thing. Likes old time black and white musicals and those types of movies. Um, and it is interesting that Gwen has not completely broken away from her father. That she still, in her own way, does need him, even though she knows he's really evil and he's done these terrible things to other people that she is opposed to. But um, at the core of it all, he is still her father, and that is something that you just can't get over. TJ, did you notice? Did you have any problems with the episode?
You know, I really didn't. I'm just sitting here trying to think of what didn't I like, and I really can't come up with much because I found it thoroughly enjoyable.
Um, I don't really have anything bad, although I was a little bit surprised that we didn't. I mean, after the events of last week's episode, we did not see anything with. We didn't have a follow up on what was going on the Dauntless with.
Yeah, I did notice that. That I actually was kind of wondering. The only place that the diviner really showed up was in the holodeck fantasy, and I kind of like they left us hanging as to what the heck is going to happen
Yeah,
after we found out that you know the cute little ensign was actually
was
one of
actually
his species in disguise, and that they had you know
yeah that
the
they
bad guys are all working together now.
yeah that they're all kind of lined up and we're getting ready to set up for the big finale.
Yeah,
Um, but yeah, I mean, I guess things are about to get a lot darker before we get to the light.
yeah.
So, as far as the Gorn, start since the creation of the holodeck in Star Trek: The Next Generation, we've had a lot of episodes where the crew has gotten trapped on the holodeck and had to play out their fantasy or whatever until the holodeck decides to let them go.
Yeah.
Some people might wonder, well, why do you keep doing this? Well, I think we're only seeing it in the time frames of like, okay, when something's really going wrong, but people are using that thing 24 hours a day, so it's not always breaking down. And the problem is it's like any other technology; it can either go very wrong or it can just do what it's supposed to. But I really thought at first this was going to be like Emergence, that we were going to see the we were going to see something, either the weapon or the protostar's intelligence itself grow. Because
Mhm.
for those of you who don't remember, Emergence was the name of one of the penultimate episodes of Star Trek: The Next Generation, where there was something going on with the holodeck, and it turned out that it was some sort of intelligence that was growing from within inside the ship and had taken over the holodeck and needed the Enterprise to get to a certain point where it separate itself from the ship and then it could grow on its own. So that was, I had wondered if they were going to do something like that, but then of course we got the big twist, and oh no, the weapon has taken over Janeway, and now the ship is heading towards the Dauntless and possibly the destruction of the Federation.
Well, one thing I thought was interesting was when they first started it, the thing that made them aware that something weird was happening was when they started seeing the holodeck characters outside the holodeck. And I thought, oh, it's going to be one of those, where what like Moriarty, inventing himself in TNG to leave the holodeck, and
Yeah.
not that's not supposed to happen. And or when the doctor, got his holo emitter in Voyager so that he could, walk around outside of his medical lab. But then it turned out that that wasn't the case at all because ta-da, reveal they were all still trapped on the holodeck, and all the time they thought that they were out in the ship, they were still in the holodeck, which was a fun twist. I enjoyed that.
The thing about the holodeck is that it has always been a really cool plot device. That it's like, okay, you're going to strange new worlds. Well, okay, here's a strange new world inside of your own ship, and
Mm-hmm.
it's somewhat based off your own id and your own interests. And the first time, of course, we ever saw people getting trapped in the holodeck was the episode "The Big Goodbye."
Was that
Where
a Dixon Hill
yes,
mystery? Yeah.
where we find out that Picard has a thing for pulp mysteries, and he wanted to play out this Sam Spade, Philip Marlowe type character, but it turned out that the something had taken over the ship or taken over the holodeck and turned out to safety protocols, um, and he had to you know figure out how to solve the mystery. That was one of the what I feel like was one of the gems of the first season of the TNG series.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to what you said though about Moriarty and in the episode "Ship in a Bottle,"
Mm-hmm.
that's one of my favorites. I mean, the Moriarty episodes, and I'm
Yeah.
so glad. Shameless promotion here. Moriarty will be back in the final season of Picard. We are going to see him
Awesome.
again as Marvelous. Um, because he did become one of the most interesting villains of Star Trek. And it was a shame we only saw him for a couple of episodes because I
Yeah.
liked him and the actor who plays him is amazing. Um, but I think this is now kind of a modern rite of passage in all Star Trek. Is I mean, obviously I don't think we're going to see a holodeck on Strange New Worlds because that's not supposed to be there.
Right.
Although, yeah, but we've had I think for 24th century and beyond, I think we've kind of had those holographic things, and that would be kind of cool to see on Discovery also. But
I
um,
also I like the way that they stuck in the little scientific explanation of how it works because I can't remember which character said, if we're all stuck in the same room, how is zero all the way over there? And Rock Talk was able to give the whole explanation as to how the
yeah,
holodeck uses all these, forced perspective and, ways to fake you out so that it can basically make it seem like there's much more space than there really is and stuff.
well, that's part of the core of both Star Trek in general and Prodigy specifically. Prodigy is a show on Nickelodeon, and it's supposed to be able to make science fun and interesting for young people. And unlike a lot of other sci-fi shows, Star Trek has always tried to have a nod towards hard science, even if it bends a little bit with things like transporters and warp drive.
Warp drive.
You know, um, which is still there's a lot of debate about whether or not that's possible. Transporters we're not so sure about, but yeah, a holodeck would be definitely something that is very possible. I mean, given on how we perceive space, time, and things like that, I've heard a lot of discussions about that for many years. Obviously, of course, in the real world we have VR, virtual reality, which of course you wear goggles and you have control pads and things like that.
Sure.
But yeah, but at the same time, okay, you're dumping the goggles and you're actually completely immersing yourself in that reality.
Yeah.
And obviously, I think a holodeck would have a lot of advantages for things like, obviously training, um, exercise, or just having fun, without getting injured or anything. So, um, I mean, me, I'd love to act out my favorite horror movie and know that the chainsaw wielding maniac, you know, can't hurt me, but still get that kind of adrenaline going. But um,
I always thought it was great the way you'd see the different characters engaging in whatever sports they enjoyed. You know, like Chief O'Brien and Bashir going off to do whitewater rafting,
yeah,
and Picard with his own saddle, going to go ride a horse on the holodeck,
yeah, and of
and of
course,
course Cisco with his baseball, totally into baseball.
and Worf fighting his holographic monsters.
Yes,
Getting a little stressed out. Um, and more recently, Picard having like his chateau
right,
in a holographic simulation aboard their ship on his show. But
right.
um, but I told you, I just mentioned what my holodeck simulations might look like. TJ, do you want to tell us what your holodeck simulations might include?
Oh boy. Yeah, I think it would be a lot of like skiing and I would, yeah, like, oh, driving a sports car on a really nice road, that'd be great. Just being out in beautiful scenery. I would use it to like simulate natural settings and stuff. I think that would be my thing.
Yeah, well, that's a pretty good way to go. So let's move into some predictions. And this week I finally have one, but TJ, I want to hear yours first.
Ooh, you're putting me on the spot. Let's see.
Mhm.
No, you go first.
Oh, darn it. Okay, all right. Um, so I have been chatting with a few other friends about some theories I've had recently about where I think we're going to go in these last few episodes. And I think the writing is kind of on the wall here about going about this, and then also going into season two. Um, so I think we have found that the Dauntless has managed to catch up with the Protostar. Um, I am going to say that what I think is going to happen is they are going to get back to the Diviner's home world, and the Protostar is going to send out the weapon, and that is going to be what causes the destruction of the Diviner's home planet. Not Starfleet, but the weapon he created. Now, being the narcissistic villain that he is, he's still going to blame Starfleet his and the kids specifically for turning his own weapon against them, even though he created that weapon and he's the reason for all this. I also predict that they will have an option to try to change the past by trying to prevent the weapon and therefore the destruction of the Diviner's home world, which would also kind of cause them not to meet, which changed the whole timeline. That's another possibility. And then finally, I mean, well, going back to that for just a second, is that's going to be a real hard choice because that means Gwen will never have been born. None of them will have ever gotten together and formed the friendship they did. And, things will just be normal. I, you know, but obviously I don't think they'll go in that direction. I think, though, for season two, they will have found Chakotay. I'm hoping he will be a more full time regular on the show, and that the kids will try to go to Starfleet Academy. But Dal and the gang are so far advanced that the academy's a little bit redundant, and also Dal I cannot see him sitting still in a classroom for a real long periods of time. So they would ultimately send him and the gang back to the Protostar under the supervision of Chakotay and Hollow Janeway as they teach them how to become the next generation of great Starfleet officers. TJ.
I have to admit, I haven't thought that far ahead. I've just been enjoying the ride, and I can't see those kids ending up in Starfleet Academy. I completely agree. I think the only way that you can have the show continue is to have them on their own ship. It's that's what makes it work. You've got this little ragtag crew of kids, and having the only adult be, the hologram that keeps them pointed in the right direction. That's the conceit of the whole show. So yeah, I can't imagine how they're gonna, if they changed that basic concept of the show, I don't think it would continue to work. So
Yeah,
whatever happens, I think they're still gonna be a crew and on their own ship.
yeah, I know that for a very long time, TJ, you can attest to this. There has been a desire to create a Starfleet Academy series.
Yeah, and of course we thought that that was what was happening when they wrote Tilly out
Yeah.
of Discovery, because she went off to Starfleet Academy, and everybody went, "Ooh, is this it? Are we getting our Starfleet Academy show?" But I
Yeah.
haven't heard anything about that.
I've only heard rumors about that. Yeah, that's going to be the big spin-off from Discovery when it wraps up.
Yeah.
That it's going to be a whole show focusing on Tilly training these new officers,
Mm-hmm.
um, and getting these new characters, which could be interesting, but a lot of it, could just be like, sitting around classrooms and boring.
Which, of course, is the issue that they had with Deep Space Nine, is that everybody said, well, I mean, yeah, we've got all these great characters, but we're just sitting around on a space station. The whole thing about Star Trek is you're supposed to be out exploring. And so then they introduced the
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 Dominion,
Defiant,
the
so that they
Defiant.
could go out and cruise around the galaxy and do exciting stuff somewhere other than on Deep Space Nine. And I think that would happen too if they did a Starfleet Academy show. It would
Yeah,
get boring real fast if all they were doing was sitting around classrooms. So
yeah.
they would have to have field trips and training exercises in the ships and all that kind of stuff.
Oh yeah. I mean, that's what they. Yeah, totally. But I think this show has got to stay on the Protostar, either
Yeah.
with Chakotay and Hollow Janeway teaching these kids how to, be Starfleet officers. Because I mean, like I just said, Dal is not the kind of guy that's going to sit around. Okay, he's always got to be doing stuff, and he's got to be in the middle of everything.
Yeah. And
He's
if of all of the grown-ups that they could have brought into this, am I the only one that thinks Chakotay? Ew, like why Chakotay? He was like one of my least favorite characters.
uh
I mean, I love Janeway. Janeway's fantastic, but I mean, why Chakotay?
well, I think that Chakotay, and I do agree to a certain point that yeah, they did not always have. I think that his character development got stymied in places. I think they could have done more with his character, but I think at the same time he was always meant to be kind of a teacher to the characters and the crew members, and I think that's what he's going to be again. Um, Certainly, I'm very glad that Robert Beltran is coming back. I mean, I'm not trying to disagree with you here, TJ, because I do have some friends that have said they were really excited about him coming back.
Yeah,
And
well,
wanting to see more of
maybe I'm
him.
in the minority. I actually don't like him a whole lot.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I just feel like they could have done a lot more with the character, but there were he had some really good
Well, and
episodes.
it wasn't necessarily Robert Beltran's fault. I mean, I'm
No,
sure he's a perfectly good actor, but
oh
just
yes,
like it just reeked of a bunch of white guys in a writer's room writing a generic American Indian character. It's like, oh, like they didn't even identify what tribe, what
right.
traditions he came from. They just sort of mixed and matched traditions from different Native American tribes, and it was kind of cringy, really.
You're right. Yeah, that was a bad thing. And I think one of the great things about this new era of writers they brought together for the various Star Trek shows is they are trying to have more diversity, more voices. It's not just white
Yeah,
guys. It's everybody is having a piece because we've kind of this is not 1968 anymore, and we're not writing Bonanza. We're writing
yeah,
a new era of Star Trek that has to be more inclusive and has to reflect more people. Otherwise, it's not living up to the promise that was made a long time ago, that this is
mhm,
about all of us. This is not just about white guys, but men, women, children, other ethnic groups, aliens from other planets. This is about everybody.
yeah.
So and it needs to be about that. And I hope there will be, if we go forward in a season two, some Indigenous American writers will be included. I know they've gone to great lengths with that on upcoming Marvel shows like I'm blanking on it right now. She was one of the villains in Hawkeye, and
Uh, yeah, I don't
she's
know.
yeah, okay. If anybody would like to write in, I will probably end up thinking about this later on, and it will cross my mind. But if anybody would like to write in and remind me who I'm thinking of, but I do know she is getting her own streaming show on Disney. But this is Star Trek, so we're going to talk about that.
Yes.
Let's stick to Star Trek for now.
I have a question for you. Do you think that they are aiming for a redemption arc for the Diviner? Because it really seems like they've been softening him up with having him have amnesia, and the only thing that he remembers is that he has to get to his daughter, save his daughter. I mean, that really seemed to make him a much more relatable guy. I mean, now that he's, you know, back with the baddies, we could assume that he's going to have another evil heel turn, but do you think that he's going to come around to being, more kind in his, treatment of what's happening?
well, let's look back on our history of villains here in Star Trek. Khan had an opportunity at redemption,
Yeah,
and
that didn't
he
go well.
that didn't go very well at all. Gul Dukat, we,
Yeah,
we thought he was going to turn.
he started getting soft and fluffy for a while there, but that
He
didn't stick.
did, but he just couldn't do it because
Yeah,
that's not who Gul Dukat was. He was very much, you know,
yeah,
Cardassian centric, and everything that's good for me is good for Cardassia. Um, and yes, he was a loving father, but he wanted to be a loving father, but at the same time, he could not turn his back on his need to be in power
yeah,
and to be ruling the Cardassian Union and the Alpha Quadrant. And he was willing to sell his soul first to the Dominion, then to the
sure,
Power Wraiths to make that happen. And at the same time, he was unwilling to ever see that the actions he did led to the deaths of his daughter and made him the most despised person in the history of the Alpha Quadrant, and that what he was doing was not good for anyone. And he still could, he still had the gumption to blame Cisco and the prophets and everybody else for what he had gone wrong for him,
yeah,
rather than actually fess up that, unlike Jakar on Babylon 5, who realized these are the things I've done wrong.
hmm,
When I should have been doing this, I'm going to turn the page and I'm going to do the right thing from now on. I'm going to sacrifice myself if I have to save the universe. And
yeah,
that's not something Gul Dukat could do. That's not something Khan could do. And I don't think the Diviner can. I mean, I hate to
yeah.
be the guy who throws
He's
cold water on this, but I don't see
yeah. It felt in the last few, this arc, it felt as if they were leaning towards making him soften up a bit, but yeah, you got to have a bad guy.
yeah. I was just told by our producer that the character I was thinking of is Echo, and
Ah, okay.
yes, and I did see something on NPR couple of months ago where they were talking about uh, writing her character and then her show, and it was being done largely by Indigenous American writers. And I'm hoping that there will be, the writers' room will make room for some Indigenous Americans if we're going to have Chakotay
Yeah,
on the show. Let's have them in there. Let's let's build on some of the stuff we know we saw in on Voyager and make it make sense.
yeah.
You know, so okay, so um, I think we're coming up onto the end here. TJ, is there anything you would like to tell us that you got coming up here in the future?
Really just mostly I go to a lot of SF and film conventions. So if you're ever at a major SF con, I'm going to try real hard to get to the NASFIC convention in Winnipeg. next September, which is or August, which is opposite the Worldcon. The Worldcon, is the really big one where they vote on the Hugo Awards. But this year it's in China, so definitely not going to that one. But if I can, I'll try to make it to Winnipeg, and if I do, I'll almost likely be performing. I'll certainly be at Balticon Memorial Day weekend. That's one where they have a good filk scene, and if I'm not performing, you can certainly find me in a filk circle. And yeah, that's pretty much my existence, is bopping around to as many SF cons as I can and singing at most of them.
Okay, thank you for letting us know that, TJ, and we will definitely come try to check you out at your work and everything. I should have gotten you to bring your guitar and actually perform for us a little bit. We should have thought. I'm sorry, we should have done that. Next time we have you hosting, I'm
There
going
you
to make
go.
you
Next
do
time.
that. All right, I'm
Okay.
going to make you do that. Okay, so as always, I am still head of the Northern Virginia Star Trek meetup group, unless a coup has happened that I don't know about. Ha ha ha. TJ, do you know anything about that?
Not a thing.
Okay. No, I'm just kidding. In case anybody's interested, you can reach out to us through meetup.org. We are getting ready to make plans for next year, various things we're going to do as a group. And we love having new members come join us and share their love of Star Trek and anything also that's superhero, MCU, DCU, other sci fi genres. And oh, our producers just let me know that we will be at CES in January also. So come check us out for that. Look that up. My book, Bigfoot and Other Tales of the Supernatural, is still available on Amazon and Kindle. I'm hoping to also, in the next couple months, read an audio version for Audible, which you will be hearing my voice, such as it is, reading my stories. And I am also working on another book. I don't want to say what it is completely what it's about. Although I think if you are a fan of Star Trek, you will like this. This is my own attempt to dive into space operas, as it were. So I will talk more about that as we get closer to that. I'm hoping to have that done, if not in time for Farpoint, then most definitely for Shore Leave. So, at any rate, I will. At any rate, so on that note, TJ, where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
I'm on Facebook. Yeah, that would be about it. Facebook. TJ Burnside Clapp. 2 words. CLAPP.
And I am also on Facebook under Josh Pritchett Jr. And if anybody wants to ask me any questions about anything or ask us any questions, we're always happy to chat. Until next week, live long and prosper. Thanks for joining us, everybody. Bye bye.